Hey guys, politics or philosophy here, and today I'm going to be covering just a quick abortion argument. It's called the bodily autonomy violinist analogy, and it's basically just, attacking the right to life by using bodily autonomy as an excuse to kill babies. So, I have some things I want to address. I'm going to make my critique on it, make some refutations, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy what I have to say about this. So here we go. You wake up in the morning and find yourself back to back in bed with an unconscious violinist, a famous unconscious violinist. He has been found to have a fatal kidney ailment, and the Society of Music Lovers has canvassed all the available medical records and found that you alone have the right blood type to help. They have therefore kidnapped you, and last night the violinist's circulatory system was plugged into yours, so that your kidneys can be used to extract poisons from his blood as well as your own. If he is unplugged from you now, he will die, but in 9 months he will have recovered from his ailment and can safely be unplugged from you. Now, Thompson argues that one can permissibly unplug oneself from the violinist even though this will cause his death. This is due to limits on the right to life, which does not include the right to use in another person's body, and so by unplugging the violinist, one does not violate his right to life but merely deprives him of something, the use of someone else's body to which he has no right. If you allow him to go on using your kidneys, this is a kindness on your part, and not something he can claim from you as his due. For the same reason, Thompson says, abortion does not violate the fetus's legitimate right to life, but merely deprives the fetus of something, the non-consensual use of one pregnant person's body in life-supporting functions to which it has no right. Thus, by choosing to terminate her pregnancy, Thomas concludes that a pregnant woman does not normally violate the fetus's right to life, but merely withdraws its use from her own body, which usually causes the fetus to die. Okay, so a few things here that make it very, very different. A child and a violinist are not comparable. They are not. Not in any similar case. Specifically, your child versus a random famous violinist. Okay, so, while you're not obligated to hospitalize any random violinist, obviously, this clearly isn't applicable for your child. You're meant to provide healthcare coverage, nutrients, stable income, stable education, etc., etc., and if you don't meet these requirements for your child, they'll be taken away from you and brought to a family that can really support the child. And furthermore, if the child somehow dies from deprivation of any of these necessities, like, deprivation of nutrients, for example, the burden of responsibility is on your shoulders, and you will most certainly go to jail for homicide. So in essence, there is a burden of responsibility with your child, where if it were with somebody else, you'd have a lot less responsibility to bear. This distinction changes very important things that the analogy doesn't address. However, if this still isn't enough sufficient evidence somehow, I'll now provide a counter-analogy and show how it's more comparable to abortion than the other analogy. Now, before I say this analogy, I just want to quickly say that this was not made by me. I'm paraphrasing this from a Catholic apologetic named Trent Horn. Definitely check him out. I love him. Okay, let's say that you went on a boat trip and went afar from the shore. While you're on your vacation, you just now notice a child, your own child, on your boat. You have enough resources and nutrients to provide for both you and the child. It would take approximately 9 months in order for you to return to shore and bring you and your child back to safety. Now, you can either A, wait the 9 months to return to shore and keep you and your child safe, or B, kill the child by throwing them overboard or in some way getting rid of them, right? Now, if you return to shore and keep you and your child safe, you've done your job as being a great mother, and have committed no immoral action, However, if you do kill the child for the sake of property autonomy, then you've committed murder. And that's that. So in this analogy, I'm essentially only proposing that there are instances where your autonomy as a whole is overruled by the right to life. No matter the individual, it is your obligation and duty to provide for the one on your boat. Also, real quick, I want to address another issue with bodily autonomy that this analogy is very guilty in not addressing, and it's the acknowledgement and responsibility of actions. There are certain actions or precautions that you take, and if you do not take, there comes a burden of responsibility for the consequences of that action. So let me provide an example. You're conducting a science experiment in a laboratory. a laboratory that isn't yours, and you decide to mix a few chemicals together. Mixing these few chemicals together will cause a massive eruption onto you and the entire laboratory. You know this, but by taking precautions, you decide to mix in another chemical that should counteract the eruption that will occur. You completely understand the risks of still committing this action and still decide upon it. And also to note, there is a chance, and you know this, there is a chance that this chemical will not counteract the rest of the chemicals. So there's a chance the eruption will still occur. You still decide to do this. Now, after doing all of this, let's say the eruption still occurs and gets all over the laboratory, damaging all of the equipment and getting all over you. The next question would be, who is responsible for this? Is there no culprit? Or is the person who understood the potential consequences and still decided to conduct an experiment the one who is responsible? I think from this it's pretty evident that the person who conducted the experiment is pretty responsible for the crime, and similarly, the person who consents to sexual acts and ends up with a child is the agent to blame for that. That's just another thought experiment that the analogy never addressed that I just wanted to quickly make, so there you go. Anyways, a pro-choicer might attempt to refute the boat analogy by saying that it's only addressing property autonomy and not bodily autonomy. So I propose this next analogy. And before I address this, I just want to say that I am not the original person who came up with this analogy, but I couldn't find the person who did make it. It was some TikToker. He was a conservative pro-life TikToker. Alright, so here we go. You're on a skyscraper with a child. The child is tiptoeing on the ledge of the skyscraper, and he accidentally trips. Is now hanging on the ledge of the skyscraper. You grab the child by their hand, and you now have two choices. A, you can either pull the child up, which for the sake of argument, let's say that you have the strength to do so, and save the child from falling to their death. Or B, let go of the child because they dare infringe on your bodily autonomy. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious what the answer is. It's B. How could a child do that to you? No, I'm kidding. But, really, this analogy right here is only meant to attack bodily autonomy. The idea that bodily autonomy can always infringe over the right to life. In this instance, it's clearly not the case that your bodily autonomy doesn't suffice. It's not adequate. It's not a good excuse. You can't kill a child over the excuse of bodily autonomy. The moment you force an agent to depend on you by grabbing their hand while they're gripping onto the ledge of a building, the moment they did that is the moment that they're either responsible for murder or they could have saved the child, depending if they let go on purpose or not. Anyway, yeah, that's my quick refutation to bodily autonomy, and I hope you guys have enjoyed.